Latin from scratch, 32nd class, we are going to study the demonstrative adjectives pronouns. In the 32nd class, we'll study the morphosyntax. This means that we are going to study, actually mostly the morphology, which means tables, actually 6 tables, okay? And then the syntax also, because there is something to learn about syntax, but not so much. We include 6 of them, so 6 tables, although not all of them are pure demonstratives. This is just really a matter of terminology, it doesn't really matter. However, they've always been studied together due to their similar features. So that's why, because I could divide this class into 2 classes, 2 lessons. But, because there are so many similar features, it makes more sense to study everything in the same lesson, okay? So here we have this table of contents, which might look quite big, but then it's really not so hard. Okay, so first, let's begin with the general morphosyntax. Originally, these pronouns, these demonstratives, had their own declension patterns, but don't freak out because eventually they kind of merge with the noun-adjective declension patterns that we already know, like altus, alta, altum, etc. So they are quite similar, especially in the plural. However, there are still some conservative features specific to pronouns. Okay, so in general, they look much like the declension of bonus, bona, bonum, altus, alta, altum, but there are these conservative features from the times that these pronouns had a different declension from adjectives. The most important things. In the singular, for all 3 genders, we have the genitive in ius. So you have to be careful not to confuse ius for some masculine, okay? And the dative in I. Also for the 3 genders is the same. I, ius, ius, ius for the genitive, okay? All this said, the declension of these pronouns looks quite similar to 1-2 adjectives, but we still have to notice and learn the differences. I mentioned the 2 biggest differences, but there are some other differences. Depending on their grammatical meaning, the so-called demonstrative pronouns fall into one of these 2 groups, although they are often mixed. Again, this is kind of about terminology, but also a bit about syntax, so don't obsess so much about terminology, just understand the syntactic component, okay? So, we have 2 kinds. Deictic, or actually Deictic, or in American English I think you just say Deictic, whatever, Deictic. They place a person or thing in a place or a time. So for example, pretty much in English, this, which is like this, which is here, or that, which is there. So you see, this, that, and usually is in the place, but also it can be in the time. It's not the same. This time or that time, not that time, like further times. And then phoric. They refer to a person or thing already mentioned, anaphoric. So ana, because ana in Greek means upwards. So ana is something, we refer to something which was already up, or which will be mentioned, cataphoric, because kata in Greek means downwards. So something which will be mentioned below. Mostly anaphoric. From another perspective, all of them can function as a pure pronoun or as adjectives. What does it mean? Actually, we already kind of know. No? So, for example, if I say vidi unc, I saw this one. But I could also say vidi unc puerum, I saw this boy. So here we just have unc, so it is a pronoun. It is the main word. But here unc puerum, puerum is the main word, and unc just specifies. So here it is an adjective. Okay, so as I said, we have these 2 categories, deictic or phoric, and we have 3 pronouns, so 3 tables, and 3 pronouns, so 3 tables. Let's begin with deictic pronouns adjectives. In English and in many other languages, the deictic pronouns are distributed in 2 levels. What is close to the speaker, so this, what is here, and everything else, that, which is there, okay? However, Latin establishes 3 levels, So for example, if you know Spanish, you are familiar with this, no? Because in Spanish we have este, ese, aquel, okay? Of course, we are not here to learn Spanish. So close to the speaker, ik, so this is this is equivalent to this, but then we have this double distinction, close to the listener, so close to you, iste, and everything else, ille, okay? Of course, the most problematic pronoun will be iste, because you see that in English we have what is closer to me and everything else. But in Latin we have what is closest to me, everything else, and in the middle, what is close to the listener, to you. Okay, so you see that these three levels is kind of like first person, second person, and third person. Okay, so this might be easier to understand like that. But of course, in English, you don't really have this equivalent to iste, no? What is close to the listener. So depending on the context, sometimes it will be translated as this or as that, just that context. So now is the time for the tables. Close to the speaker, which is like, proximity to the speaker, near the speaker, whatever, okay? Which is pretty much the equivalent to this. And we have ik, ik, ok. And here you already see like this kind of funny ik, ik, ok. But then like it doesn't always finish with this k sound. For example, here you have I, ike. So this one is kind of funny, okay? What can you do? But in general, you notice that it is pretty much what you can expect. Maybe not so much in the plural, in the nominative, but then, for example, here, no, because here you have os, as, so accusative, no? Accusative like altos, altas. Then unk, ank. So here, because we have this c, of course, we would have expected m for the accusative singular, but of course, we don't say no? You just say unk. So, of course, you write it with n. Then we were mentioning uius, uius, uius for the genitive singular, uic, uic, uic for the dative singular, and then this is what you can kind of expect, ok, ac, ok, is, orum, arum, orum, etc. Also, notice, because now we are going to talk about this, really. Notice that here I have uius, and this e, I didn't write the length of this e. I write the length of everything, but I didn't write the length of this e. Why? Because this e is not a vowel. Remember that e, when it is written between vowels, it is like a consonant. We could write it with a j, okay? So it is not u-i-us, but uius, okay? Remember that? But then, for example, here, in iste, ista, istud, by the way, if you know Spanish, be careful with this, because this is, in Spanish, este is this, but in Latin, iste is that, ese, whatever, okay? So, notice here that ius, it is a vowel. Why? Here it wasn't a vowel. Here it is a vowel, because here it doesn't go between two vowels. So here it is a vowel, here it was a consonant. And now also notice that this goes against the rules that we said in the first module. No, because why? Because we said a vowel right before a vowel is always short, but here it is long. So this is an exception. And actually this is so rare that many times we can find it short. So depending on whether it is short or long, it will be. If it's long, which is like, let's say, the rule, if it's long, then the accent is istius. But if it is short, then it would be istius. Okay? whatever, I mean, this is not so important at the moment. Then again, iste, ista, istud, of course, always in the neuter, nominative and accusative are the same, nominative and accusative are the same. Then you see that this one is much more similar to altus, alta, altum, etc. Also notice that, for example, here we don't have istus, we have iste, and this is going to be also, I mean, it's going to be appearing in other pronouns, that in the nominative singular masculine we have iste, not istus. Then this is more or less what you can expect. Then of course istius, isti, isto, ista, isto, and that's it. Okay, this is quite, let's say, regular. Then, a small note. In classical texts, it often has a pejorative meaning. And by the way, notice pejorative, pejor, from comparatives. So a pejorative, if you don't know what pejorative means, is something which is bad about someone, okay? So iste homo, like literally, like without any connotation, it would be just that man. But in classical texts, often iste means that infamous man. Like we are saying something bad about that man. Okay, so that's why actually iste, all of it, okay? The pronoun itself, it is not so easy to find it in Latin with a general meaning, okay? Then, far from both. This is a bit dirty, okay? Far from both. So that, okay? Ille, illa, illud. Again, we see similarities, no? Ille, again, we have this e, then we have this d. And other than that, again, it's more or less what we can expect. Again, illius, illi, that's it. Then, it often has a value more similar to the third person personal pronoun. Remember that when we were studying personal pronouns, we said in Latin there is no by itself, there is no third person personal pronoun. So when you do need a third person personal pronoun, you use, for example, this. And that's why, for example, Spanish, él, he, ella, she. And of course, if you have a bit of imagination, ille, él, ella, illa. Okay? So, when ille, illa, illud is used as a pronoun in Spanish, many times it is just, in Latin, sorry, it is just the third person personal pronoun. And when it is used as an adjective, then it's closer to the definite article, the. Spanish, el, la. Okay? In some contexts, it might have an emphatic meaning. So this is kind of the opposite, because remember that we said iste homo, that infamous man. But if we say, for example, ille Scipio, then it's more like that famous Scipio. Okay? So, this is kind of funny, but that's how it was. Okay, so that's the deictic pronouns. So this, that, and that. Now, the phoric pronouns. Now, this is actually harder. Morphologically, is more or less the same, but then, like, knowing how to translate each of them might be a bit more confusing, let's say. These are actually a bit more confusing than the deictic pronouns, since there are really no exact equivalents in English. Even in Spanish, there are no exact equivalents, no? So it depends a lot on the context. So we have a bit more there. Purely phoric, usually anaphoric. So usually it refers to something which has been mentioned. It refers to someone or something which has already been mentioned or will be soon, especially in a relative clause. We haven't studied relative clauses yet. I think it's in the next module, but not yet. So doesn't matter for now. And here we have is, ea, id. Again, more or less what we can expect. Of course, eius, a. And here you see again that this e is a consonant, like semi-consonant, no? So it doesn't have length. And then you see here a, e, as, is. This means that you can find any of the variants. They mean exactly the same. There is no difference in any kind of difference, okay? And then this one can also be used just as a third person pronoun. Sometimes we will find ille, illa, illud to mean he, she, but also is, ea, it can be used as he, she, etc. They also. Then, identity. Something, yeah, of course, you see here that this table is kind of weird, but don't freak out, there's nothing wrong with it. Identity. Something has already been mentioned and a point is being made that we are referring to that something, not any other thing. Okay? So, and you might know this idem, but it refers the same. Okay? So let's see. Of course, here the table is, you see that it is quite big, but it is just because it has to be this big, because otherwise the variants don't fit. But I mean, it's pretty much the same as we had here, not like this, but this is super small, so it fits in one line. Here I had to split it a bit, because otherwise it would destroy the table. Okay, so here we have idem, eadem, idem, and you see that actually this is pretty much this, but with them at the end. There are also some small changes, okay, so it's not just this with them at the end, so you cannot just do that, but pretty much the same. So again, what we can expect, so for example, and here notice also the variants, so eadem, idem, idem, eundem, but also eumdem, which this is actually what we would expect more. Then eusdem, of course, eadem, and here also notice that this is irregular, because we would have expected this e to be short. No, it's long, just like an exception, somehow. Then eorundem or eurundem with m or with n, and then of course here eisdem, eisdem, istem. That's it. Okay, there's really nothing more to say there. Just, I mean, of course, when I say there's nothing more, just learning the table by heart. Okay, there is no difference in meaning between variants. Okay, so this is what I already said. And then the last pronoun, emphasis plus identity. It is easier to just know that we can usually translate it as the very whoever, or whoever himself, etc. We are going to see a few examples. So here we have ipse, ipsa, ipsum. Also notice here that it is not ipsud. Also notice that again here it is not ipsus. Okay? Then the rest is what we can expect. Ipsius, ipsi. That's it. Okay? Nothing new anymore. Do notice that it can refer to any of the three persons. Okay? Because until now, all of these are used, I mean, all of these and going up are used only for the third person, but this can refer to any of the three persons, singular or plural. So, let's see some examples to understand it better. If we say ipse Caesar pugnavit, then Caesar himself fought. Okay, so this is what this ipse means, like himself. We are emphasizing and identifying. Then, the famous nosce te ipsum, know thyself. So here it is referring to the second person singular. So nosce te ipsum. And then here, this one is the most curious, let's say. Ipsae fecimus. We ourselves made it. So we don't have translation, okay? So ipsae fecimus. How do we know? I mean, ipsae, we know that it is nominative, plural, feminine. But how do we know that it is we and not they women? Because that's what we would have expected, no? Like they women did it. So how do we know that it is we, women ourselves, did it? Because the verb says that it is first person plural. Okay, so that's how we know that it is we. Okay, in Latin it is quite obvious. In English I know that it is not so obvious. Okay. Okay. So that's it. I know that this class is kind of like annoying, so many tables and so many little exceptions and so many little details, etc. But that's how it is. Now, once again, we go to the main page of the module and we practice.